What's going on, everyone? I've been using the M11, my dream camera, for about 4 months now, and I think it's finally time to give my personal, no BS thoughts. Now, this isn't going to be your usual big tech spec sort of lab testing type of review. This is just going to be my sort of personal thoughts on the M11 and how it's been over the last 4 months as a photographer for travel, lifestyle, editorial work, that sort of thing. Now, the M11 is obviously my dream camera, and I want to tell you everything that I absolutely adore about it. But I also, of course, want to touch on the little quirks about it that I don't love. And we're going to get into all of that, including why this camera is unlike any other camera I've ever used. Quick disclaimer, MPB.com did send me this camera to keep as a part of this review and collaboration, but more on that later. Let's start with the obvious, the design. This thing is absolutely beautiful. It's one of the main reasons why I wanted the camera was simply because of how it looked. Leica absolutely nailed the form factor, the size, everything about it just feels good in your hands. It feels like every dial and button was designed with intention. It's not trying to impress you with flashy features, it just feels solid. I'm coming from the Leica Q2, which incidentally was my favorite camera to use over the past year, leading up to getting this camera. I spent about a year shooting with that camera before finally reaching out to MPB and trying to get my hands on the M11 because I've always wanted one. Let's talk about the build quality and how it feels in my hands. One of the main reasons why I wanted the M11 was because it sort of gave that feeling of shooting with a film camera without actually having to shoot film. Don't get mad at me, film photographers. I love film and I wish I had more time to actually shoot film. My editing style actually sort of is meant to replicate an analog look anyways. But unfortunately for what I do, shooting film just isn't practical. It kind of slows me down just a little too much. Not to mention film prices right now are just astronomical and I don't really feel like dealing with that either. So for the time being, this camera is about as close as I'd like to get to actually shooting on a film camera. And I'll be honest, the build quality makes me feel confident when I'm actually out in the field shooting. Like, it feels super durable in my hands. It feels like this thing is going to last a long time. Like, I feel like when I'm out on a hike or shooting in the outdoors in the rain, wind, dust, and all that, I feel like it's going to be just fine. It's not technically weather sealed like some of the more modern cameras, but I don't feel like it'll be an issue. I just have to be a little extra careful. I will also mention that along with the M11, MPB also sent this lens. It is the Leica M11 28mm f2.8. I wanted this lens mostly for one reason. It's tiny, especially if you take the lens hood off. This thing just kind of feels like you can almost put it in your pocket. Obviously you can't, but it feels like you can. And 28mm, ever since using the Q2, has kind of become my go-to focal length. It's just wide enough for street photography, but with a 60 megapixel sensor, I don't have any problems sort of cropping in on certain subjects. Since getting this camera, I've also gotten a couple more lenses though. I've gotten the 35mm Voigtlander Nocticon f1.4 and the Typhawk 50mm f2. Sort of that vintage looking lens that they just released. Once I saw it, I knew I had to get it. Next, let's talk about the image quality and the sensor performance. The sensor is phenomenal. The reason I love using the 28mm is because it has a 60 megapixel sensor, which gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of cropping in later on certain scenes or subjects. I've also had the chance to crop in on landscapes and lifestyle shoots where I'm kind of in the streets and want to pick out a certain subject that's pretty far away from me, where a 50mm probably would have been better, but I honestly didn't need it. The only thing you really lose out on is a little bit of compression, but that doesn't really bother me, to be honest. I just love being able to walk around with one lens, whether it be a 28 or 35, and not having to really worry about having to swap lenses really quickly. It just kind of, makes shooting, especially with street photography, way more efficient. The dynamic range is outrageous. I'm able to sort of underexpose, and I've never had any issue with pulling up the shadows or losing any detail or information in the shadows. And I think Leica kind of thrives in high contrast situations anyway. So I love shooting in high contrast where it feels like the highlights should be a little blown out, but as long as you underexpose, your shadows are almost always fine. The highlight roll-off feels super natural and almost analog in a way, as long as you're being careful about how you exposure image. Obviously with Leica, I've always had an issue where if you overexpose and you lose your highlights, they're basically gone. This is no different. I have to say it's probably better than the Q2 simply because it has a larger sensor size, but I really try not to blow out my highlights on an image because I've always had an issue with it. The color science is amazing. The only problem that I've had with the color science specifically is that I think it leans very heavily towards magenta, which is very different from the Leica Q2. I feel like the Q2 was very neutral in terms of its tint. I don't think you can change that, which kind of sucks, but I'm not putting it in the cons section of this video because it's so easy to fix in post, especially with a 60 megapixel sensor. You just have so much information in the raw files. The color is not overly saturated, it's soft, it's subtle. I've always been a massive fan of Leica's color science more than any other camera that I've ever used, and that's because I feel like they do the best job of showing natural colors. I think Leica also strives on like having sort of that filmic look in a lot of their color. I think the skin tones are really great. That really thrives on the greens and blues. I just usually have to adjust the reds and the oranges a little bit more, but I think that's mostly because they're leaning more magenta than I would typically prefer in my images. Now let's talk about the overall shooting experience with the Leica M11. Because for me, I think this is where this camera stands out and is the exact reason why I bought this camera. And it might also be why this camera is not for everyone. First off, there's no autofocus. Leica inline cameras strictly don't use autofocus. They're a rangefinder camera. So you use the little rangefinder up here to focus on what you're trying to shoot. And honestly, that's exactly why I got this camera. The rangefinder forces me to slow down and be more intentional with my photography. I'm way more connected to a scene and way more connected to that exact moment when I'm shooting a manual focus and with a rangefinder camera. On more new age cameras like with Nikon and Canon and Sony, these cameras feel more like computers than they do cameras to me. Like everything is so fast paced, and I don't know, I have a Canon R5C and that's why I do a lot of my product or client photography on it, and when I'm holding that camera, it feels like I'm just doing a job. It doesn't feel like I'm actually passionately doing photography, it just feels like I'm working. By slowing down, I'm able to sort of just be in that moment and connect with my scene or my subject, which is the exact reason why I got this camera. But with having a rangefinder camera, there are some drawbacks. And I'm not going to say it's a drawback to the camera, more of just the rangefinder experience. It's not always practical. You're going to miss some shots. I've missed so many moments so far because I'm just not used to a rangefinder camera. And that's just kind of part of it. That's part of the process. For candid portraits, lifestyle, fast-paced street shooting, or like when I'm trying to photograph my family, I've missed so many shots. If I'm shooting stuff with my daughter or my wife and I'm just trying to capture candid moments of them, I've been forced to go back to the Q2 for a little while and just use autofocus. But I think with time and over the past 4 months so far, I've actually gotten a lot better with using the rangefinder. I've gotten a lot quicker at finding my focus. So I think in time I will be able to use this for those more candid moments where my daughter just won't stop moving. But for now, I'm still kind of reverting back to the Q2 for those little moments. Though I've been humbled a time or two, when it comes to landscape or street photography where I'm not having to chase someone, this is the camera I'm picking up every single time. I just wanted to take a quick break to thank MPB for sponsoring today's video and sending me the Leica M11 and the 28mm to do this review. If you've never used mpb.com to buy or sell gear, I highly recommend it. The platform is super clean and intuitive, and they inspect and grade every single piece of gear so you know exactly what you're buying. But here's what I really love about MPB. It's a sustainable company. When you buy used gear, you're giving it a second life. That means less waste in landfills and fewer newer materials being used to build cameras. It's better for your planet and it's better for your wallet. You can get instant quotes, doorstep pickup, speedy payments, and insured shipping. As someone who hates leaving camera gear on shelves to gather dust, I love MPB because it allows me to give my used gear a second chance for someone else to use. If you're thinking about trying out a Leica, or you simply want to sell some of your used gear you don't use anymore, be sure to check out MPB. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now let's get to the stuff about the Leica M11 that I don't love. First off, let's talk about the battery life. The battery life is pretty good. The best thing about this camera for battery life is that it has USB-C charging, so I always keep a cord and a portable charger so that I can charge it in the car or on a plane or just wherever I need out on a shoot. I also, of course, keep an extra battery in my backpack at all times. The M10 was awesome because it sort of had a base plate down here that would cover the memory card holder and the battery holder. It had that sort of base plate that you would use to twist and open up to put film in on the Leica M film series. And I thought that was really charming, and I hate that they did not put that on the M11. I hate it because, one, obviously this area is just a little less protected, but more so because it was just like a nice little touch that made your camera feel a little more like a film camera and like you were having a film-like experience. Next is the infamous software issues or software bugs that the M11 has had since the day it came out. Particularly a freezing issue when turning on or turning off the camera, or sometimes when you're replaying photos. I always kind of thought when I was looking at reviews myself that people were kind of hyping this up a little bit. Maybe it wasn't happening as much as they were saying it was. And unfortunately, I was very, very wrong. The first day I got the Leica, it froze probably 2 or 3 times after only shooting it for about an hour. And for a $9,000 camera, that's so bad. Like, that just can't happen. Luckily, Leica has released multiple firmware updates since then, and as far as I know, the issue with my particular camera has been fixed. I haven't had it freeze at all since doing the latest firmware, so hopefully that stays that way. Finally, let's talk about the biggest issue that people will run into when getting the M11, the price. Let's be honest though, Leicas are luxury items at this point. They're like a luxury watch. Most people do not need this camera and do not need a $9,000 camera in general. If MPB hadn't sent me this camera, I likely wouldn't be holding it right now. Not to say that I would never invest in the M11 because that's simply not true, but it would probably be a long ways off while I save up for it. This essentially costs 3 times the amount that I paid for my used Leica Q2. So that's a massive investment, not to mention the lenses themselves. That doesn't even come with a lens. The lenses themselves can range anywhere from, if you're getting a Leica specific lens, $2,000 to $9,000 themselves. But again, that's why buying used is such a great move. You can get so much more bang for your buck. You can save a ton of money, but still get that Leica magic. That being said, there are other more budget-friendly options, we'll say, in the M line, such as the M240 or the M10, which is the predecessor to this camera, which is still pretty expensive, but cheaper than this. So all that said, who is the M11 for? It's tough due to its price point and its manual focusing capabilities, but I'd say it's for the photographer who really wants to slow down. If you care more about the photography process rather than the technical ability to have AI autofocusing or shooting 60 frames per second, this might be the camera for you. Or any Leica for that matter, to be honest. They all seem to slow me down, even the Q2 itself. These cameras aren't built with all the brand new technology that you're getting out of the Sony Alpha line or the Canon R or the Nikon Z. If you're a street photographer or a documentary photographer, or simply a photographer that wants to feel the passion for photography again, this camera might speak to you. After 4 months of shooting with the Leica M11, I can honestly say that it has changed everything about the way that I shoot. It's not perfect, but it's so close. It made me fall in love with photography again, and I don't say that lightly. A big thanks again to MPB for providing the camera and for making this experience happen in the first place. If you have any other questions about the Leica M11 or my personal shooting experience with it, or the comparisons between it and the Q2, please drop a comment below, and I'll be sure to get back to you as soon as I can. I appreciate you all watching. Please make sure to subscribe if you want to see more reviews like this or more travel videos. See you guys next time.